Hey YouTube, what's happening? It's Richard, founder of Short Term Rental University and professional real estate developer. And today's video is kind of like ideological, philosophical about future trends, future opportunities, and it's based on what we're seeing right now. So, is the remote working thing here to stay, or is it a fad, or is it just like, well, it worked after COVID, but the world's going to resume and go back to normal? And the reason this is important to you, the viewers, is that this affects our occupancy, this affects our average daily rates, this actually affects our profitability. So if you're not sure what side you want to be on, you want to be pro remote working. You want to be pro, remote schooling and learning. And here's the good news. I think it's really here to stay. Now, of course, there will be some workforces that demand that employees come back, and we're starting to see that mostly on Wall Street. We're seeing Morgan Stanley CEO saying he wants everybody back in, and I don't know if it was in September, but the point is there's certain industries and certain cities that are requesting and or requiring some of their workforce to come back into the office. And that's their right, and that's what they may want, and they're certainly capable of making those decisions for themselves. But the better question is, how do the employees feel about that, and are they going to participate, or are they going to do something else? And that's what I find interesting. Just this week I read two statistics. The first one comes from Bloomberg News. They did a survey and they went and asked, a couple thousand people, are you going to go back into the office? And they said yes or no. And then the interesting question was, well, what if your employer forced you to go back into the office? What would you do? And 39% of the respondents said they would find a new job. So think about that. That's 4 out of 10 people that say, I'm not going back to the office for my existing job or for any job. I love this remote working thing. I'm equally as productive. I'm much happier. I get to spend time with my child, my family, my friends, whatever, my dog. I'm not going back into the office. You can take my job and give it to someone else. So that's one data point. Microsoft has done a similar poll, and they found 41% of the respondents are not going back into the office. They're prepared to walk away from their job if it means that they have to go back into the office. So that's, again, 4 out of 10. That's a really whopping number if you stop and think about it. 40 out of 100, that's a lot of people that are saying no. And once certain people start to say no, it's really easier for, say, the more junior people to be like, well, if my boss isn't going back, I'm not going back, and we'll quit. And I don't know that these companies that are forcing people to go in will change their ways, although we're starting to see some adoption. Instead of saying I need you in the office 5 days a week, I think it was Morgan Stanley again who said, oh, okay, well, at least 3 days a week. But, that's not good enough. That means there's still 2 days a week where these people want to work remotely, work from the Outer Banks of North Carolina, work from ski country, work from Mexico, work from Costa Rica, just do their job remotely. And that's a really, really change that's here to stay post-COVID. So we as Airbnb short-term rental Vrbo hosts have to accommodate those people staying in our places with some of the amenities. I just filmed a video, but we have to have blazing fast Wi-Fi. We have to have these home offices. We have to have the place where somebody can go take a really quiet board call, Zoom call, interview, all of these things, because the world is changing directly in front of us. It's happening in real time. These polls are occurring in real time, and we can just say, well, this was because of COVID, or we can stop and pause and think well, what are the lasting implications and the lasting effects of COVID? And I think this is one that's here to stay. In fact, the same article that prompted this video also shared that companies like Microsoft, like Slack, like Zoom are also changing all of their products to incorporate remote working and remote learning being here forever, right? They were really great the way that they were a year ago pre-COVID. They learned an awful lot about how people are using these and what features and so on, and they're modifying their systems to include things like easier participation, understand who's paying attention, understand who's sitting in the front row. All of the things that you would have from physical proximity are now coming to the virtual remote working world, and is going to make it even more accessible. And so while there are certain professions, like for instance, if you're a surgeon, you have to do it in person, although even that, you've got now robotic systems. I mean, the world is changing really quickly. So while there are some jobs that require you to be in person, there are a lot of jobs that won't, including judges are now listening to hearings and cases remotely. There's tele-doctoring, all sorts of things, and it's only happening at an increasing speed. And so we, as Airbnb hosts, as real estate investors, we need to be ahead of the curve. We need to position ourselves intelligently for this big, massive change that's unfolding behind, like right before our very eyes, and not just say like, oh, well, that worked because of COVID, but everything's gonna bounce back to normal. It's not. Do me a favor, comment below, what are your thoughts? What are you seeing? Would you go back to the office if your boss told you, or are you quitting your job? And I see a lot of people leaving W-2 jobs, by the way, in our Facebook group, becoming full-time real estate investors in the short-term rental space because the opportunities are that great. So if your boss was gonna force you to go back to work, is this the impetus for you to say, you know what, I was thinking about quitting in a week, a month, a year anyway, I'm just gonna do it now. There's no better time to get started than now. Comment below, let me know your thoughts. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel and the email. Let's get this party started right.